This is a place called the Shrine of the Book. I like to call this place the Jot and Tittle Museum. And the reason I call it the Jot and Tittle Museum is that in this place, this is part of the Israel Museum, they have two things on display. One is the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the other is the what's called the Aleppo Codex, which is called the crown jewel of Hebrew manuscripts. They call it the Keter Aram Tzova, the Aleppo crown, because it's considered the ultimate Hebrew manuscript that preserves the minute points of Scripture. And you know, 2,000 years ago, there was a man who talked about not one jot or one tittle passing away from the Torah. Do you know who said that? And the place where these jots and tittles are preserved is in this museum, the Jot and Tittle Museum. And one of my dreams in life was to get into the museum and be able to see this. This is the Aleppo Codex, as I said, the crown jewel. Now, anybody can walk in and see what you see in this photograph here. But what they don't know, and what I learned at the university, is that in fact only the top 2 pages are real. The rest of the pages, the ones on the side, those are preserved in a vault, in a secret vault that I'm not allowed to tell you where it is. But they're preserved in a secret vault, and the reason for that is that they're afraid someone, this being the Middle East, not here, but where the Jot and Tittle Museum is located, being the Middle East, they're afraid someone will walk in and blow it up. And it's too important, it's irreplaceable. And so what they've done is taken the top 2 pages, and everything, if we can show that again, everything here on the side, that is what I call a fake. Keith doesn't like me calling it a fake. He prefers me referring to it as a replica. So everything here on the side is a replica. Only these top 2 pages are real. And the rest of it is in the vault. And so one of my dreams in life, one of my aspirations studying at the university was to get into the vault and see the original. And that's because, as I mentioned, although I was born and raised in Illinois, deep down in my heart, I'm from Missouri. And I need to see it for myself. And if you go and you take any Bible in the world, any translation of the Old Testament, of the Tanakh, into English, it's based on this manuscript, on the Aleppo Codex. And when I have any Hebrew printing, you know, I have a dozen different Hebrew printings of the Old Testament, of the Tanakh in my house, and every one of them goes back to the Aleppo Codex. So me, being from Missouri, in my heart, I needed to get into that vault and see the original for myself. And this was a dream that I thought would never happen. I thought, how am I ever going to get in there? They don't let people in there. It's not on display. They're too afraid that someone will blow it up or damage it. Well, one day, this Methodist pastor, Keith Johnson, calls me up after I had met him about a year earlier, and he tells me over the phone, he says that I have this important guest who wants to come to Israel. He wants to have a similar experience to what I had, and his name is Reggie White. And I say, who's that? He's some football player who won the Superbowl or something like that. And so I look him up online. Okay, sounds very impressive, but I've never watched a Super Bowl in my life. I'm not into sports. And I say, okay, I'll take him on a tour. And I take him around the country, and he actually stays with Michael, and we have some interactions there. But I end up taking him to see 2 things. That was the main part of his visit. He wanted to see 2 things. One is he wanted to go and see the Hebrew manuscripts of Matthew. That was one of the things that we did that day. And that was no problem whatsoever. Anybody can go in and see those if you know what to look for. The second thing was a little bit more of a challenge. The second thing he wanted to see, he had been studying Scripture, and he also had been looking for the sources. He had been preaching for years in his off-season. They used to call him the Minister of Defense. And as the Minister of Defense, he was preaching the standard out-of-the-box messages that he was told to preach. Well, when he retired from football, he told me that he wanted to become as great a minister, a preacher, as he had been a football player. And he didn't become such a great football player by accident. A lot of it had to do with just born talent, but it also had to do with determination and working hard. And he said, I'm going to work as hard as becoming a minister, as a preacher, as I was as a football player. And he started to read the Bible. And what he was looking for is the source of all those sermons he had been preaching over the years. And he couldn't find them. And then he thought, well, maybe if I go back to the original language, I'll find them. And so he started to actually study Hebrew. And one of the things he had heard about from Keith, who let it out of the bag, was about this Aleppo Codex. And specifically, that the one on display isn't the real one. So Reggie, I speak with him on the phone. he says in this deep voice that he wants to see the original Aleppo Codex, not the replica on display, but the one in the vault. And so, all right, so what do? I call up the people at the Jot and Tittle Museum, and I say to them, can we get into the vault to see and I do what they call the PR thing. I say, there's this famous football player, who I've never heard of, coming from America, and he wants to see the original Aleppo Codex. And they say to me, no problem, it's on display at the Shrine of the Book. Anybody can come in and see it. And then I say to them, no, not the replica. He wants to see the one in the vault. Then there's silence on the other end of the phone. And the guy's thinking, how does he know about this? It's a secret. Well, the guy says, no way, no go. He said, Ariel Sharon, who was the prime minister at the time, couldn't get in here to see it. It's not for tourists. This isn't a joke. This isn't a game. We don't let people in to see it. It's a national treasure that just is not available for people, for the general public. And I said, okay, I did the best I could, and I hung up the phone. I tried. You know, all you could do is the best you can. About an hour later, I get a call from that guy's boss. And turns out that one of his big donors is a huge football fan. And he says, not only can you come in to see the vault, but I'll take you there personally to show it to you. And this is how I ended up in the vault, seeing the original Aleppo Codex. This is me about 80 pounds ago. And this is Reggie of blessed memory. And here is the original Aleppo Codex. And the guy's got the white gloves. He can't touch it directly because the acid on his hand will damage the paper, the parchment. It needs to last another 1,000 or 2,000 years. And this was one of the high points of my life, getting in to see this Aleppo Codex in the vault.
Thank you for supporting Nehemia's McCour Hebrew Foundation. Learn more at nehemiaswall.com.